And I would ask Senator Rhett if he would do the invocation for us. I believe you're in Mike 10, aren't you?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. We thank you, Lord, for another day's journey, and we're glad about it, an opportunity to do the people's work. Give us your wisdom and guidance, and walk with us as we do the people's work. And we ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. All right. I just left the healthcare committee. We've got a few people that do both things, and the vice chair is actually presenting a bill up there right now. They're on their last bill, but we've got at least two members on that committee I know besides myself that are still there. So those three are still tied up in healthcare. We're really just going to do hearings today. The structure, of course, got changed around a little bit with some events today, and we want to hear these. We're getting close to the end of the Senate bills that are in the committee, and we'll try to get those taken care of and then go over to the House. And Senator Eccles just informed me up there that I believe the same bill she has is on the rules calendar for the House to hear tomorrow. And so she said she would be willing to hold off and see how that does over there. I've always learned that having two vehicles can be better than one, but that's her decision. So she's going to hold off for right now and stay up in the Healthcare Committee meeting. So Senator Ginn, if you want to come up to the witness stand right here, and we will hear Senate Bill 403.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. You know, Senate Bill 403 is real easy. Every year, and it happened before I got into the legislature, but there's been a law to basically send the notice of assessment out anytime, but pretty much every year, anytime that something's going on with your property assessment. And when they do, they're required by law to include a statement on what your expected tax bill would be. Now, I think everybody in here likes factual stuff. The problem is that you have an appointed board of assessors that's required by law to put out an estimated tax bill. The only way that you're going to know your tax bill is to know what the total digest is going to be and know what your budget is, and then you can do the math and come up with a millage rate. So the best thing that they have to do is they use last year's millage rate. So if you're looking at a county that sees a lot of positive economic development and the prices of everybody's property goes up, what's going to happen is let's say that property values go up 20%. Well, then if you just do the straight math, that property assessment goes up 20%. They're using last year's millage rate. Automatically, they're sending misinformation to the public. They're sending out something that says, you're looking at a 20% tax increase, when that may not be anything close to reality. The Board of Commissioners, the Board of Education, any development authorities or any other taxing entities in that district decide what those taxes will be only after they set their budget and go through the budget process. So what this bill that I'm proposing to you does one simple thing. It eliminates the need to misinform the public. It strikes the statement of including a estimated tax bill when we know beyond any shadow of a doubt that estimated tax bill is going to be wrong. And so for me, I don't like the fact that we misinform the public. Now, I'm for 100% for making sure the public understands, hey, your property value has gone up. And so if you're looking at, or gone down, there are times when property values go down. But if you're looking at the bill, I want the property owner to be informed of what's happening with their assessment. In law, we also make sure that anytime any local governing authority is going to increase their budget and increase taxes, that they have to have 3 public hearings. They have to be held on 2 of those, have to be held on 2 separate days. There has to be a 5-year history of levy that's advertised in the local newspaper. There's a lot of things that we do, but misinforming the public does 2 things. And if you probably get to see them yourself. If you get a bill that says, hey, my tax bill is going up 20%, you're probably not real happy. and it's more than 100%. There's never been a correct one that says it's right. So for me, all I'm trying to do is let's just take the error of what we send to them and get rid of that, and still make sure that they understand if their property values have changed, that they do know that their property value has changed.
All right, and for the members that came in, we've got appropriations going on. We've got our vice chair presenting to the health committee that I just left with a couple of our other members up there. So we're doing hearings only today on these bills to try to get the information, move them forward. But I just want to say that if it's, I know a lot of us are having to be in 2 or 3 places. If there's some place you need to be, if you're worried we're going to vote, then you're welcome to go to that other meeting. I know some people are torn between places and wanted to respect your time on that. So my comment would be is I've got a kind of a comprehensive Senate Bill 349 that might have some similar things in it, and I appreciate you bringing forward. And I was hopeful that I would get that bill on the floor tomorrow, but with the health issues that happened in the Senate today and 4 or 5 bills being pulled back and put on for tomorrow, we're all shifting back for a day or two. But I do understand where you're coming from on this, and I think it is wrong to send out wrong information. The ones last year, I know many of the exemptions weren't on there. They assumed a millage rate that may or not be the same, and they also didn't have in the 500 or so that the state was putting into the property tax bill. So it was a pretty erroneous number, and it stirs everybody up, and we want to put factual information out. I think we've got another senator that's worked on similar stuff as well. So appreciate you coming forward. Senator, is that Calzert has a
Yes, thank you,
question.
Mr. Chairman. I just want to make sure I understand what the current law requires. When they send this notice out, are they telling you what the new appraised value is? In other words, have the properties already been appraised?
They use actual mass appraisal in the tax office. I'm not a tax appraiser, and I couldn't tell you exactly what that is, but if you're going to sell your home, you might have an individual appraisal. But what they're doing is they're based on, houses that are in a range of this many square feet or this type of siding or different factors that come into it that appraise. And it could be, commercial, industrial, there are a lot of different factors in there. But they're using mass appraisal techniques. And so based on mass appraisal techniques, they take classes of property and then they'll adjust them based on market conditions. One of the things that the assessors have to do is they have to hit a range between 38 and 42% to try to zero that 40% tax assessment. And when they do, the county is rewarded in that their utilities are paying the freight the same 40% assessment. If they miss that range, if they're too high or too low, the state's helping hand comes in and says, hey, they have to correct that, and they're penalized. They don't collect as much money from the utilities in that case. But on this appraisal, every year that you get this notice of appraisal, it is specific to your property, and there is telling you what you had last year as the appraisal plus what you have next year. And that's important. You need to know whether your appraised value went up or down. And if you think your appraisal is incorrect, you have a certain time period to review that and go to, if it's a clerical error, if there's a change in it. But you have several steps. You can go to the Board of Assessors. If you don't agree with what the assessors tell you there, and there's something that you're not seeing there, you can go to, there's a public board made up of individuals have a little bit more training in the Board of Equalization. And of course, your final on that is to go to Superior Court. I think you've probably been there a lot more than me.
If I could jump in there too, you've got 2 things going on here. This is the appraisers that are appraising the property, and they need to appraise the property, and we need to put on there if they think it's worth more than it was last year, less, whatever. That needs to be on there. But appraisers don't set tax rates. County commissioners set tax rates. Cities and city school boards and county school boards set tax rates. And they're trying to assume a tax rate and assume certain exemptions, and they're really not capable of doing that, and they don't put them all in there, and they put a falsely high number. sometimes on what the estimated tax bill is gonna be, and it's just wrong. And it causes a lot of consternation, when people get that wrong number. And so what I think you're trying to do is say, let the appraisers appraise, let them show what the appraisal is, but let the people send out the notice that set the tax rates, what the tax is gonna be.
The Board of Assessors is actually the organization, and the appraisers are individuals that work underneath the Board of Assessors.
Yeah, well, that's why I think it's valuable to have this notice, because otherwise the body that is setting the tax rate doesn't hear back from the taxpayers till it's too late.
Exactly.
I want to know if the millage rate stays the same, here's my new value, this is what my taxes will be, so I can go down there and raise hell and make them lower that millage rate. Otherwise, it's too late. They've already passed it, and then they say, oh, well, we told you what your property was worth, you should have figured it out.
I agree with you that the individual property owner needs to be aware of the change in assessed value on what they're looking at. The problem is that you have the elected officials that are, whatever governing authority, they're elected officials for the Board of Education, the commissioner, county commissioners, city council members, whatever. And the Board of Assessors is actually appointed by the Board of Commissioners or the governing authority. Those members that are on the Board of Assessors, their job is just to assess the property. They don't have any say-so or wherewithal to deal with what your tax rate's gonna be. That goes back to your governing authorities or your city council or Board of Education or something like that. So what we're looking at is, you've got people that are sending out information that if it's all wrong, they're misleading the public when they really don't need to. What we need to do is make sure, and I'd be glad to entertain more legislation to put bigger public notice out there if there's gonna be a tax increase in a county. Right now we require the public hearings, we require mail-outs of history of millage and their tax rates. Be glad to work on something to better notify the public that way. But when we misinform the public is what my consternation is. And this is what, unfortunately, we do with this estimated tax bill that doesn't have anything to do with what the tax bill may or may not be. And I don't like it that we misinform the public. And that's where I want to try to clean that up. And I'll be glad to work with you on legislation that does a better job if there is a tax increase, or tax decrease, to let the public know, hey, here's what's going on.
I'd love to work with you, because otherwise it's a stealth tax increase based on the increased value of your property, even if the rate stays the same. And people, unless we somehow advise them, they're never gonna know. And I don't know whether it's worse to scare them to death or to blindside them.
Well, we don't want to blindside them, and I'm trying to remember. I want to say it was in the 90s that there was legislation that you can't do a backdoor tax increase by raising assessed values and leaving your millage rate the same, because indeed that is a tax increase. If your assessed values go up and your millage rate stays the same, you are raising taxes, and so they have to advertise that as a tax increase. And that's one of the things that I'd be glad to work with you on doing more steps or better steps to if a local government is raising their taxes, to inform them. I just don't like misinforming the public, and that's what, unfortunately, that line on this a notice of assessment does, is misinform the public on what that tax would be.
Now, you said it was the assessors are appointed by the county commission. 20-something years ago when I was there, it was the grand jury that did it. That may be local legislation, but in my county, I know it was the grand jury, so basically I thought it was the DA doing it.
The grand jury actually appoints the Board of Equalization.
Yeah.
And the Board of Assessors in Georgia, they're appointed for a minimum of 3-year term, and that's because they get a lot of heat. I mean, these people on the assessors, and what they're trying to do is do the best job they can to assess the value of the property. And I give them credit. They work hard to do that. But they're not setting that. They don't set the tax rates, and that's where the elected officials do. And I want to hold them accountable.
Yeah. Senator Estevez, did you have a comment you wanted to make, or?
I did, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. One of the things that doesn't line up with the current law is the fact that these taxing entities do not have, the notice does not line up with the budget making process. So in Atlanta Public Schools, for example, the millage rates being set during the summer. By that time, this notice is going out. Then you also have public meetings that are required, and it could lead to confusion for taxpayers versus it being a cleaner process. And I've seen, at least in Fulton County, that oftentimes that first notice is ignored because there's so much information and people generally believe it's wrong, so they just ignore it until they get their final assessment and tax notice, and that's the one they take. So I think in some ways, to the extent that we could streamline it, make it cleaner, so that citizens can actually rely on what the information that they're receiving and have single sources of truth, to me that is something that would be desired for my constituents.
Thank you.
That
I
was
think
not,
that's,
that was not a question, that was more of a comment.
I think it's a very good comment, and I think it's one of the things that, you know, we want to be forthcoming to the public and make sure that they're making decisions on their personal finances based on correct information.
All right, well, I don't see any more questions. Again, we appreciate you bringing this forward, and we will continue on this process.
I'd love to ask the committee for a favorable vote when you get that chance.
All right, we agree with your concept, but we also are trying to look at a bigger picture thing too as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks.
Committee members.
Last bill today is Senator Billy Hickman, and if you want to, you're welcome to stay there, step down there, whatever you want to do.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is Senate Resolution 575 LC 491568. I think it's pretty obvious of the passion that the Senate has for the last couple of years on literacy. And this is kind of a literacy bill, because what we've found out over time is that our children, and I could keep calling them children in the state of Georgia, are not reading on grade level. As you heard me say this morning, in the third grade, we've got 56% of our children in the third grade in the state of Georgia currently are not reading on grade level. But however, even as a result of that, we're still building big football stadiums. We're still building big baseball stadiums. We're building Taj Mahal schools and putting in artificial turf football fields, but yet our children can't read. Well, eSPLOST, as it is right now, can only be used to fund capital projects or can be used to pay off debt. What this bill does, this expands eSPLOST. And I've got a little group that I meet with back in Statesboro, education group. One is a superintendent, another one is the head of ARESA, and some school teachers. And I've reviewed all this with them, and I've also reviewed it with the Republican caucus and the Democrat caucus. But what this bill does, it tells you that classroom is more important than sports. Sports is important, but teaching our children how to read is more important than anything else. My wife's a retired teacher, got two daughter-in-laws teachers. Both daughter-in-laws spend $100 a month on supplies, and they get reimbursed by the school system about $100 a year. So what this bill does, this allows when a school is doing the eSPLOST, education SPLOST, this allows them to take a portion of the education SPLOST and allow it to go back into the classroom, anywhere from 0% to 15%. People ask me, they say, why did you choose 15%? Because I said, well, sound like 20% was too high. But when that percentage goes back in the classroom, and it would be used to fund supplies for the teachers, it would be used to fund tutors for the children, students, mentors for the teachers, technology for the classroom. It cannot be used to cut the grass. It can't be used to wax the gym floors. It can't be used to paint the buildings, that type of thing. It has to go directly back in the classroom. In our county, Bullock County, 5%, Charles Wilson, our superintendent, told me that 5% was $50,000 a month. So we cannot imagine taking $50,000 a month, $600,000 a year, and putting back into the classrooms. The bill, in the bill itself, to read what the resolution said, the procurement, a combination of, so it said the procurement of materials, supplies, and instructional support to be used for educational purposes in the classroom, and the key to this resolution in the classroom, provided, however, that expenditures made pursuant to subparagraph B4 shall be accounted for in a separate account, cannot be put into the general fund, can't be commingled, it has to be in a separate fund, separate restricted account to be used solely for such expenditure, and shall comprise not more than 15% of the local school system total expenditure of proceeds for the E-Splosh. The key to that paragraph, Mr. Chairman, is classroom. And I can't imagine, I think every teacher in the state of Georgia, retired or current teaching, would vote for this constitutional amendment because it puts money back in the classroom for mentors for them, tutors for children, supplies for the classroom, and technology for the classroom. So, Mr. Chairman, that's the resolution. As I said, it makes a lot of sense. It's not to take away from the building of the schools and all that. It just provides an opportunity to put more supplies, mentors, and tutors and all back into the classrooms. So I'll be
All
open
right.
for questions.
As you know, this has been a topic of, there's a lot of people that look and say there's a slippery slope when we start doing this. And you got materials and supplies, but when you say instructional supports, I guess you're talking about people in that case, aren't you, paying?
Yes, sir, that's, or books or laptops, but only into the classroom. And I know we've had several E-Splosh bills over time that took a percentage of the proceeds and used for operational expenses for the building, for the schools and that type of thing. This has nothing to do with this. This must go back into the classroom.
Okay. Any questions from the committee on this? Senator Estevez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator, as far as the language in the bill goes, this is not a requirement that there be 15% dedicated to these expenditures. This is an option. It's just purely giving
Yes, sir.
school districts the opportunity to do it.
Yes, sir. It actually initially, Senator, I had a minimum of 5% and a maximum of 15%, because I was concerned that if we didn't put a minimum in it, the superintendents would not do anything. But more and more talking to superintendents that I've talked to in my area, this provides them an option. And what we're doing is looking for an option. And I think that with that option there, they may not do 5%, but I believe they'll do 2 or 3%. Like I said, in my county, 5% is $50,000 a month.
And I know sometimes there's a concern that you don't want to budget around money that is temporary. But in this case, this would be a 5-year, for the most part, a 5-year time period. So that's...
Yes, sir. It would tie into the E-Splosh that's happening in that particular time. So in essence, Senator, this bill, if it's passed and signed, if there's E-Splosh in effect right now, it won't mess with those. If there's E-Splosh that's being planned, it won't mess with those. It will be the next time an E-Splosh comes about. And it would be for the period of time of the E-Splosh.
Great. And then the last question I have is, do you have any concern that school districts may become reliant on this mechanism when they maybe should be using their general fund to do it?
That's a very good question. I think I base a lot of this on this literacy stuff that we work so hard on, and I think if they would have been willing to use some of their general fund as it is now, they would have already had tutors for the students and mentors for the teachers, and they've been, like I said, in our situation, my family situation, they spend $100 a month for supplies, and they get reimbursed $100. So I think if the mechanism are there, will do it. This allows them to use this fund.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do you know whether there are any school districts in the state of Georgia that have not imposed an E-Splosh?
So, please ask that again.
Do you know whether there are any school districts in the state of Georgia that have not imposed the E-Splosh?
No, sir, I do not know of any school districts.
So you
'Cause
think they're 100% already doing these?
Yes, you know, because everywhere I go, I see new schools being built, and I don't think they could build them without East Bluffs.
All right, any other questions? Seeing none, we will, continue this discussion.
Good.
And apologize for today being like it is, but it's, a factor of a couple of different things.
Good. Thank you, Mr.
So,
Chairman. Thank you, sir.
With
Appreciate it.
that, meeting adjourned.